I got 27 in the LNAT in 2024, and recently I've been getting a lot of questions about how to prepare, how to book, and just the LNAT as a whole. So I thought I'd make a long form video for you guys about how to ace the LNAT. Okay, so a quick overview. First of all, what is the LNAT? Now, the LNAT is a law admissions test, and it's not actually needed for all of the unis in the UK. There's just a specific 9 of them that it's needed for. I've got a list of them here. So Oxford, Cambridge, LSE, UCL, King's College London, Bristol, which is actually where I'm at, Durham, Glasgow and SOAS. So if you're thinking of applying to any of those unis, this is an exam that you need to sit. And you normally sit it at the sort of beginning of year 13, between kind of September and, you know, obviously January, before you submit your application. Now, obviously, if you are an early applicant, so you're planning to apply to Oxford or Cambridge, you will have needed to sit it earlier because you need to sit it before you submit your application around October 15th. Now, in terms of booking the LNAT, that is something you need to do yourself rather than something your school will do for you. So on the 1st of August every year, LNAT booking opens, and the first available slot will be September 1st. Now, LNAT booking is notoriously difficult. It's not quite as bad as some other exams like the UCAT, where slots go in like seconds, but it's still worth getting up early on August 1st and making sure you book it as soon as the booking opens. Now, there's also lots of difficulty because they don't publish an official opening time for the bookings. Yeah, some people find that they can't book until 8 AM, whereas some people can book from 6 AM. So it's definitely a tricky one, but I would just set your alarm as early as possible. And I would also recommend sitting the exam as early as you can, because obviously if you don't book it until December, then if you suddenly decide you want to apply to Oxford or Cambridge, which is actually what I did, you're going to have to reschedule your exam earlier than you booked it. And also, you're going to be in year 13, you're going to have coursework, mocks, personal statement, and so it's kind of just better to try and get the LNAT out of the way before you have so many other things to worry about. So how you book it is you go to the LNAT website, which is lnat.ac.uk, and you will need your UCAS 10-digit PIN number, which is your personal identification number. But if you don't have this, don't worry, because you can book it by just entering 10 zeros as your identification number, and then at a later date, make sure you do this before you submit your application so that your LNAT can get put with your application. You go back and replace your sort of placeholder zeros with your actual number. So yeah, you need to make an account on the website. It's a Pearson site, and there is a fee of £75 within the UK and EU, I think, and outside of that it's £120. So it is quite a pricey exam, just more downsides to doing the exam, to be honest. But yeah, so let's talk about how the actual LNAT is structured. So the LNAT is a 2-hour 15-minute long exam, and it has 2 parts, section A and section B. Section A, you get given 12 different passages and multiple choice questions to answer on the passages, and you get 95 minutes to do this, which I found, because there's 42 questions, is actually quite a generous amount of time. So that, at least for me, wasn't a particular struggle. And then section B, you have to write an essay. Now you get 40 minutes to do this, and you just answer one question. So if you're doing any essay subjects already, which if you're planning to apply for law, it's likely you are, then it probably won't be too unlike lots of the things you're trying to do in your subjects, just obviously on a different topic. Now, you do actually get a choice of 3 different questions, so that's another benefit, that you don't just have to do the one question they ask. Now, we're going to go over how you actually prepare for this, because I know the LNAT can be very difficult to prepare for, especially when it seems like every single person out there is trying to sell you stuff. Now, personally, I did not spend any money practicing for my LNAT, and I have not been sponsored by any companies. I am just going to show you the websites and free resources I used, because I think lots of these courses, although are probably great, wouldn't personally know, they're so expensive, and that's not always necessary. I think the first thing to remember with the LNAT is it is hard, and obviously it's a tricky exam designed to test your ability to mainly do verbal reasoning as well as other things, but it's not the hardest exam you'll ever have to sit. It's not like a bar exam or the UCAT that has like 8 different sections. It's a tricky exam, but it's not the end of the world. I personally would recommend starting revising at the beginning of year 12 summer, but it's not like you have to be putting in 8-hour days every day. Just take it easy, see how it goes. But I think the start of year 12 summer is a good time to start. If you haven't started yet though, don't worry, because you still have plenty of time. You just might have to do a couple 3-hour days instead of a 1-hour day. So how are you going to revise? Well, the first thing I would say you should do is go to the official LNAT website, and on that website they have a couple of full practice tests, and before you do anything else, I would do one of the practice tests from the official website, just to see how you find it. No practice, no preparation, just go for it, see what happens, and that will give you a really good sort of baseline so you know how much you have to revise. Quick thing to note though, there are only 3 practice tests on the official LNAT website, so I would do one of them and then save the other 2 for much later when you're nearly done. Although lots of other websites are really good, these are obviously the most accurate and the most similar to what you'll actually be facing on test day. The thing with the LNAT is the only way to get good at it is by doing it. Like most things, practice makes perfect. I just like cringed so hard saying that. Anyway, but it's true. The only way to get good at part A's is to practice them. And there's actually loads and loads and loads of websites where you can find free part A's. 3 that I found were particularly good and also accurate to the test, because some of them are just a bit rogue and not actually what the actual test is like, so that's why you do have to be a little bit careful. But 3 sites that I found were really good were the Lawyer Portal, LawMind and Exams Ninja. And I think honestly, if you just practice a ton of the part A's, then you'll start to see the sort of patterns in them, because lots of the questions do get quite similar. You'll get used to the sorts of texts that they give you and also the sorts of questions that they're asking. But yeah, practicing a load of part A's is basically the only way to do it. But I have had people ask me what to do with the questions they get wrong, which is a great question. I would say that really depends on how many questions you're getting wrong and sort of where you're going wrong. So if you've read a text and you've gotten most of the questions right, maybe you just got one wrong, and you reread the question, looking at the correct answer and looking back in the text, and you sort of understand what's going on, that's okay. You can probably move on from that. I would probably mark it down, and then if you run out of questions, you can always go back to the ones you got wrong, maybe a couple weeks later once you've probably forgotten the exact answer, and redo it, see if you get it right. But if you're struggling more with a whole text, I think going back over the text in a lot more detail, looking up any words you don't know, maybe even just like reading it in a different way, like honestly trying to like read texts aloud when you're struggling with them, even though you won't be able to do that in the actual exam, can really help sometimes. And so just going back over that text and then having a look at the questions again, having a look at the answers, seeing if you can just try and understand the sort of process there. And you can always ask, you know, a friend to help, a parent, or even like a tutor if you're really struggling with those sorts of verbal reasoning. And again, because it's verbal reasoning, genuinely, you've probably heard this from like all of your teachers, but just reading will help you so much. So especially over year 12 summer, you probably want to be reading some law-based books anyway to help your personal statement. and I think just reading non-fiction, if you're not used to it, can actually be quite tricky, and that might sound infantilizing to say, but it's true. So practicing reading can really help. Moving on to part B. Now, your overall LNAT score is just for part A. Like, it makes it sound a bit complicated, but there are 42 part A questions, and the number you get, so the 27 I got, meant I got 27 of the 42 right. And they do not expect you to get 42 out of 42. Like, I don't think anyone's actually ever done that. You probably need between 25 and 32 is like a really good score, but honestly it depends where you want to apply, and also you probably aren't applying to all 5 unis within this list, so you're probably applying to at least one uni that's not even using your LNAT score, so that's all I'm saying. Anyway, part B is different because the unis, instead of it being graded by LNAT, the unis get sent your essay, and so some of them look at it, some of them don't even look at it, and some of them sort of apply their own grading characteristics. Some of them are like, we're going to 80% look at your part A score and only 20% look at your part B score. So definitely look up the individual requirements of the uni you want to apply to and how much they care about part B. But let's talk about part B. Okay, part B's might sound stressful, but just remember, you have 40 minutes and you have to write 500 to 600 words. Now that's 1 page of typed A4. And again, if you're doing law, you probably already do an essay subject, but even if you don't, GCSE English, like, you've written an essay before. You sort of know what you're doing. Take a breath. And there are 3 different questions that you get given on the day. Now, to practice this, I think the best way to practice is there's 10 questions on the LNAT website, and I would honestly go through all of them and write an essay for every single one. Set us a 40-minute timer, get writing, just go, write the essays, and then maybe give them to someone else to read over, see if they can give you some feedback. But honestly, if you're sticking to your point, making clear counterpoints, you only need 2 or 3 points, 3 or 4 points, because you're only writing 500 words. So if you have your clear argument, that's pretty much the main goal here. I would try be concise because you only have about 500 words, you only have 40 minutes. It's not like you can explore every single point within what's going to be quite a nuanced subject, to be honest. I remember mine was, should Catholic orphanages be able to deny adoption to same-sex parents, which I thought was a really interesting topic, and I could so easily write about that for more than 40 minutes. And I think that's the tricky thing with the LNAT Part Bs, is that a lot of them are very vague questions. But I think the best way is to just practice. So I would go to the LNAT website, write all 10 of those, and sort of see where you're at. Obviously get someone to check it for you. Yeah, I know personally I tend to overwrite, and I think a lot of people struggle with the same thing. So just try and make sure what you're saying is really clear is the best way to do it, and you should be okay. And then once you've gone through all of the questions on the LNAT website, if you think you need to write more essays, if you maybe don't already do an essay subject, or even if you just aren't feeling super confident, LawMind also has a really good Part B question bank. And even if you think you've got the essay down, I would still go to these and just spend 5 minutes planning your points that you would make, because when you're in the actual exam, that can be the hard bit, is picking which question of the 3 you want to do and then getting some points. Once you actually start writing it, it's okay, it's something you're more used to, but actually making sure you get there, know what your argument's going to be and which question you want to answer is the tricky bit. So that's what I would recommend doing personally. Just remember, LNAT booking opens August 1st, which is today. So if you are going into year 13 in September, book your LNAT right now. If you're watching this early and you're not going into year 13 in September, put that date in your calendar for next year. Don't forget about it. I personally did have to reschedule my LNAT to 3 weeks earlier than I was going to sit it because I randomly decided I wanted to apply for Oxford. And fun fact, I'm not actually a law student. I study French and German at Bristol. If you want to hear how I ended up going from having a King's offer to study law to studying French and German at Bristol, or if you are stressed about results day and you want a funny story time, in my next video, clearing story time, because clearing, not always the worst thing to ever happen. Good luck with your LNAT. Subscribe if you enjoyed this. I make uni vlogs mainly, and recently commentary. If you are interested in pop culture, Harry Styles I made a video about recently, UK comedy, that sort of thing. Anyway, subscribe. I will see you soon. I hope this helped. Good luck with your LNAT. You'll be fine. And yeah, bye.